Excuse me. Hey, what is up, everybody? My name is James, and welcome to Horror Movie Month. This week, we are talking about Stephen King's It. Now, if you haven't seen this film, I guarantee you go see it. It ain't gonna be as the new one. If you've seen the new one, shit. Yeah. So, we're gonna be talking about this film. So every week, I'm gonna be talking about 2 movies. Not at the same time, obviously. Not at the same time, I need something to spit this shit out. I don't want to ruin this cup, fuck it. I'll just keep it in my mouth. Anyway, I'm going to be talking funny. Anyway, so, we take place in a place called, if I remember correctly, Derry. We have 7 people. We have, you can't really see it on there, I'll just go off it. We have Billy, Richie, Ben, Eddie, Beverley, Michael, and Steven. Fuck it, I'm gonna spit in the cup. As much as I love the taste of blood in my mouth, you cannot talk with blood in your mouth. Gotta spill it for a minute. Anyway, and they are a group of what is known as the Losers Club, who spend their entire summer trying to kill a mystical being known as Pennywise the Dancing Clown. Played by, in this current one, played by Tim Carey. If you don't know who Tim Carey is, I suggest you go look him up. Because he's in a lot of good movies. He was in a joke film. He was in the second Scary Movie. And I'm pretty sure he's in, what's that film called? I'm trying to think what the fucking film's called. It will come to me probably. Anyway. Good actor. Anyway, so our story. I'm not gonna be going through the whole thing like I do with my Talking Deads. Should be coming back pretty soon, though. I know what you're thinking, Shane. You're looking very interesting. It wouldn't be happening because of the awesome kick-ass shirt I'm wearing. This was given to me as a present from a friend of mine. Anyway, so back to our story. I'm not going to be going over the entire thing in its entirety. I'm going to be hitting on specific bits, things, so on. So, our film starts off with a little girl who's getting told that she has to come in the house because there's going to be a storm. She hears laughter and music and finds Pennywise is in her front yard. Later on, we see Michael, a fully grown man who's about 40-something, I think. I'm going to guess 40-something. Who's about 40-something. Trying to ask what the hell's happening, but gets told to get lost by the police. So, in search of the truth, he turns around and finds a picture of Georgie, Billy's younger brother who died in the original It attack, and decides it's time to get the original 7 losers back together. By the way, a certain amount of this is in Michael's diary. He's writing this shit down. Anyway. And so he decides, I have to call the others. So he calls back all the rest of them. He calls Billy, who remembers Georgie died by getting his arm ripped right off by It. Which, if you notice, Pennywise is on my shirt right here. Pennywise, as most people will remember it, is from the original. They will remember him from the boat scene. If you've seen the original they will know that Georgie was sailing a boat down a stream, and it fell in the gutter, and Pennywise turns up and kills him. One thing I have a problem with, I'm sorry, I'm going to drift off into the new film. One thing I have a problem with, if you look down, you do realize Georgie's head is the exact same size as the gutter. So the only way he would be able to fit in is that way. Spoiler alert, by the way, if I haven't said it already. Spoiler! That would be the only way his head would be able to fit through that. Anyone who's seen the new one will know what I'm talking about. That's the only spoiler I'm going to give away about the new one. Back to the original. Back to 1990, because that's when the original one came out. Anyway, so, Georgie, again, has his arm ripped off by Pennywise, and they find bits of him, and they have a funeral. There's a lot of people who are going to be thinking, a funeral? I don't remember that. Go watch the original 1990s one, then you will realize. Anyway, and later on, Billy decides to go into Georgie's room because he feels obviously lost without him. Opens a picture book and finds a photo of Georgie, and the photo winks at him. He drops the book, and the picture starts to bleed. He calls for his parents, who come into the room, and he says, the book. They pick up, his mom picks up the book, puts it away, and his dad says, I don't want you to ever come in here again. And he realizes the parents cannot see the blood. Why? We'll find out in a minute. So we'll move straight on to the next character. I'm going to move on to Ben. I'm not doing this in particular order. I'm just going to do this in the order I want. So don't get mad at me if I'm not doing this in film order. I'm going to move on to Ben. Ben is a new student who's just moved with his mom after his father was killed in the Navy. Also, he gets bullied for being fat and for being overweight. I shouldn't say fat, overweight is the word I should use. For being overweight by the school's bully, Henry Bauer. Which, again, I'm going to disclose for the new one. He can't drive. And there's only 3 bullies. Again. So, for making fun of him, he gets sent to the principal's office, and he mentions that he may or may not attack Ben after school. Anyway, so, later on after school, he bumps into Beverley, who introduces herself, says, hi, it's nice to meet you, blah, de blah, and Ben kind of falls into a little childhood man crush. So, later on his way home, he decides, I'm going to write a poem for Beverley, and writes a poem about how he feels about her, like, not like direct, he likes a little poem, doesn't put a name, and leaves it on her doorstep. On his way home, he bumps into Henry Bauer, who is walking home with Belch and his friend, who I cannot remember his name, because they don't really elaborate that name very often. Anyway, who basically, they drag him to the bridge, pretty much, and Henry takes out his knife and says he's going to carve his name into Ben's side. Ben then kicks Bauer, forcing him to fall backwards down the slope. Let's just pause there a second, because there's a lot of people going, again, if you've seen the original, if you've seen the newest one, again, back to 1990. Anyway, and he falls down a stream. And he lands and finds a very large pipe, big enough to fit him in, so he crawls into it as Bauer and his friends run after him and can't find him. Leaving, he hears noises, as in like, Benji, Ben. Comes out, and there's his dad in the middle of a lake. And he goes, I live over there. He goes, hi, Ben, I live over there now. It's fun, you should come see it sometime. You want a balloon? And then his uniform kind of has, for some reason, starts developing pom-poms. And then he turns into, obviously, Tim Curry's It. And then he, for some reason, gets chased by a skeleton for a short period of time. He runs away. And then he bumps into Billy and Eddie, who will go on to Eddie in a minute, and asks them if they could help, if Bauer had left yet, which they said yes they had, and he realizes he likes the idea of building things. So, let's move on. Before I go into the building thing, let's move on to Eddie. Eddie is a little boy who has asthma, who gets told several times that his stuff is just water and sugar mixed together, because you do find out later his mom is trying to protect him from something but won't elaborate what it is. And he's pretty much a germaphobe. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much Eddie's story. His mom's very constrictive of her parenting. Eddie is allowed this, that, not this and that. Very, very strict. She even tries to keep him away from the Losers Club. She's a lot thinner in this one. Anyway. And he doesn't break his arm. So we will move on. Then we meet up with Richie. Richie, who is played by, I can't remember all the actors, so don't get angry at me. Richie, who is played by Seth Green. Yeah, Seth Green, the guy who was in Austin Powers, who plays Scotty-Doo. Or, as some people know him from Scooby-Doo, the second film. Or My Name's Earl. Or Family Guy, even, plays Chris. And if you think I'm lying, here's an original photo. There's Seth Green, who plays Richie. Ben, Eddie, trying to see, Steven is the one trying to sneak his hand in the back, and Billy should be on this side, and Beverly should be there. So yeah, that's the group. Anyway, so we shall move straight on from Richie, who likes doing voices and so on. He thinks he's he's fairly intelligent. He's kind of like myself with glasses. The only difference is his is broken and he has a piece of tape. Let's move straight on. Beverly, who is a only child who also, her father is obviously an only parent. I need to stop fucking about with this. Who's an only parent looking after his daughter. Now, there's a very large difference between Beverly in the book and Beverly in the films and Beverly in the newest movie. Because remember, in the book, they're all 12. I'm gonna guess the actors who plays the newest ones in the late teens, near her late teens. Anyway, and again, book version, I won't elaborate. All I can say is she's very self-imaged, and her father's a lot more handsy than I'm comfortable with. And there's a last thing I'm not gonna say. Steve King will keep it between you and me, bro. But I'm not gonna elaborate what he put in the book. I might keep it for the end. Anyway, so Beverly, who again she's an only daughter, she's an only child whose dad is very strict as well, just not as strict as Eddie's mom, and is scared of losing her or whatever it is he's scared of. He's more scared of her growing up and leaving him, kind of like her mother, or her mother died. One of the two. They don't really elaborate what happened to her mother, or it's not in the film. Let's move straight on to Steven. Steven is a Boy Scout who is pretty much a little wuss. And that's pretty much all we know about him. Yes, there's again, I keep jumping back and forth from the original to the newest one to explain it. Not Jewish. Again, spoiler alerts if I haven't already said it. Spoiler! So we'll move straight on to, who have I not mentioned? I think I have mentioned Ben, Billy, Beverly, Eddie, Steven, Richie, Michael. Michael, who also is another new child, is more of an outsider, is the only black person in this entire group, just like Beverly's the only girl in the entire group. Michael, who is very interested in the stories of Derry itself, like why 200 so on settlers disappeared without a trace. Again, new film. Michael, not Ben. And a lot of people will be like, Bridge? No H. If you've watched the film, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, then sorry. I'm not gonna spoil the entire new film. Shit. And, so. Michael, who gets pestered again, also by Henry Bauer, they all do. Henry Bauer calls him the N-word, calls him boy, says that he causes him and his father a lot of troubles at night, and they end up chasing him, forcing Michael to run away, and then ends up bumping into the Losers Club. And so they end up throwing a large amount of rocks in Henry's way. They don't throw them back. Or at least one of them does, but kind of gives up after like 2 rocks. Anyway, and they run away. And Henry goes, oh, you'll pay. And so, yeah. So this is me explaining to children, and he does end up calling the people. Billy, who became a successful horror writer who looks exactly like Steve King. That's Billy right there's an adult who looks pretty much like Steve King. Ben, who became an architect, and Richie, who became a TV live comedic, also doing his voices. And as you could tell, he doesn't have glasses because he wears contacts. Anyway, so Beverly, who became a designer woman and married a man who's pretty close to her father, abusive, not letting her do what she felt was right. Eddie, who's in the book, he lives with a woman he's married to a woman who's just like his mother, strict in every single way. In this film, though, he is still living with his mom, but he owns a limo company. I don't know. They don't really say what his job is. Michael, who decided to stay in Derry and became a librarian, kind of like a lighthouse shining for everybody to come back home. That's how they kind of explained him. Subscribe to everybody. And Stephen, who they don't say what job is, and as soon as Michael calls him, he goes, "I'm gonna go take a bath." He goes upstairs. Now remember, I did say it's a mini-series. If I didn't, I did now. It was a mini-series, so it came in 2 halves. He goes upstairs, takes off his clothes. They show Stephen's story, and when they re-add it, they show his wife open the door, and he slashed his wrists and wrote "it" on the wall. Let's jump right back to the future. So now we have all the adults. They decide to all meet up with Derry. All meet up at Derry. Now, I haven't actually said the first fight, which kind of fucking pisses me off that I didn't say that. Anyway, the first fight, I'll go back to that anyway. The first fight, they go down in the sewers, they find silver. Richie decided to melt his mom's silver earrings, melted them down, and the only person who can shoot anything, which is a slingshot's the only weapon they have, the only person who's good at it is Beverley. Which, for a group of 6 guys with 1 girl, kind of embarrassing. Anyway, so, and they find out, obviously there's a lot of scary things down there. Henry Bauer decides he's going to follow them and kill them one by one, kind of like it. But instead, one of them decides, again, I did say there was 3, the one who's nameless decides to leave. He ends up getting eaten by it anyway. Belch and Henry, they grab Stephen and say they're going to kill him. A light starts to come down a tunnel, explodes, grabs Belch, pulls him down the pipe. Then Henry, as the thing comes back, Stephen runs, Henry looks, and the death lights, which I'll elaborate on later, looks at him, and his hair turns chalk white. And his hair's kind of like mine, it's dark brown. The only difference is his is longer and is in that kind of 60s style. Which, another thing, it's based in the early late 60s. Just thought I'd illustrate that a little bit. So, then when they get to this main piece, other things are happening. A boat comes down, like Georgie's, and there's Georgie. Now, it's the 90s, so one of his sleeves is empty, the other one has a hand. Talking! Go away. Don't me.
On your back.
Anyway, so one of his sleeves is empty instead. And so he tries to say it's his fault, and Billy realizes it's not my fault that you're dead. It just happened. And so Georgie disappears. And so because they're in a circle and they can't break that circle, or else they'll die one by one. Because that's what it wants. And then next, Beverly's dad shows up, says, "You gotta go home now." And Richie says, "There's nobody there. There's nothing there." The next thing you know, some hands touch him, and he goes, "I said there was nobody there." And the hands disappear. They show around the circle, because of fog's there, and Stephen looks at his hand. There's a clown glove holding his hand, and it grabs him and tries to eat him. But luckily, Beverly gets a lucky slingshot shot. It blows a piece of his brain out, and Eddie hits him with a piece of his inhaler, because it's pretty much like battery acid, and it starts melting part of his face away. So he ends up doing a somersault and goes down this tiny little tube. And so when they leave, Billy makes everybody swear that if they didn't kill it, they've to come back in 30 years. Yes, 30 years. Again, 1990! So, Mike calls They all start talking. They're like, "Oh, by the way, we're going to be going to a restaurant to meet up with everybody else because Billy's the first one to come." And they start having fun on on Billy's old bike that Mike found, or one similar to Billy's old bike. Anyway, so then they all get ready, all jump in kind of Richie's car, and they meet there. That's a lie, because my brain is trying to think, but it's making shit up. I'm a little dizzy, that's weird. I've never got dizzy before, it's weird. Especially sitting down. Anyway, so Billy and Michael go to the Chinese restaurant, and Ben and Beverley and everybody start meeting up. Richie, who gets a little nervous, goes, come on, breathe, it's fine. Comes out, and then comes out as his normal self, and everybody turns around and goes, beep, beep, Richie. Because it's like a parody. It's like when someone does something stupid, and you call them that thing just to be funny. Same thing. And so Michael's like, we have to kill it. And everyone's like, come on, it was a thing we made 30 years ago, come on. And Michael rattles off years, pointing out that they all happen every 30 years, which means it sleeps, comes back 30 years later, sleeps, comes back 30 years later, and so on. They all decide no, and then it comes to Henry Bauer, who's still alive, who admitted to all the murders and disappearances. Which it wasn't him, it was it, but it got into his mind because it made him crazy. So he's in a crazy mental asylum, and it persuades him to help kill the guys again. It even makes him see Belch, who is dead. Always has been dead, always will be dead. In case you're confused, Belch is called Belch because he always in people's face. It's pretty self-explanatory, really. Anyway, yes, I'm aware it's a nickname. It's pretty self-explanatory. So he ends up escaping thanks to it, and tries to kill Michael. He stabs Michael in the side. Luckily, he couldn't get. Again, racism's still a thing in Henry's mind. But Ben and Billy find him and manage to pull him off, but they lose their grip, and Henry falls, and the knife stabs him in the abdomen, and he dies. So they decide to leave his body, turn the TV up, put a do not disturb sign on the door, and leave and leg it. So they all jump into. So they take Michael to the hospital, and they're still thinking about leaving, but Billy decides, no, we are killing it now. And so they all go, and then some of their memories start flooding back. They go down, and they're exactly where they want to be. So they start following, and they keep here, and they go, and again, Georgie comes back. It's your fault. It's not my fault. You're not Georgie. Georgie is dead. Because he had forgotten, so it thought he could get in his mind again, but he failed. So, as they leave, he tells it to show himself, and he goes, you'll never see me. You can never see me. You'll only see what your little minds can imagine. And so, they go to leave, and then Billy finds out that his wife was kidnapped, because her car was at a gas station, and she was missing, and he finds that it has kidnapped her, using his deadlights. They're called the deadlights because it's basically its purest form. It's like if you get an LED light and you look at it straight head on, it blinds you. It's like that. The only difference is it makes you insane. Henry Bauer, it made his hair chalk white. Her, it just makes her like this. Which is kind of creepy, really, if you think about it. Anyway, so they find a ginormous spider that has the deadlights on the bottom of it. Billy tries to kill it. He sees the lights and stops. Ben tries to save him. He ends up seeing the lights and stops. Richie tries to grab both of them. He sees the lights and stops. Eddie, who has his hand over Beverly, who's trying to find a piece of silver that she dropped, remembers the battery acid that he sprayed in its face the first time. So he tries that. It sadly doesn't work. It grabs him, and it doesn't eat him. It just makes him scream. And then she finds the piece of silver, takes a shot, and blows up the deadlights. Billy, Richie, and Ben come out of their trance, and it drops Eddie, they then run, stab it like they then start punching and ripping it open and rips its heart out with their bare hands. This is all of them, by the way, not just one of them, all of them. Apart from Eddie, who they find out sadly dies. He's like, oh, blah, blah. And he says something really touching. I can't quite remember. It was very... And so they all leave. They go to the hospital to tell Ben that it's dead. So, what happens to them afterwards? Michael decides he's finally going to leave Derry. Yes, he will forget who it is, but he will forever keep his diary, which will be his memory, pretty much. Ben and Beverley ended up dating, getting married, and they ended up having children, which broke up the trends because none of them had ever had children. And Billy ended up staying with his wife. Her condition went crazy, was still the same, and then he done a little bike ride with her, and her brain snapped back. So that is the end of it, the original. If you want me to do one about the new one, I've only seen it once. Again, I wasn't a very big fan. I did elaborate on piece of shit and so on. On Tuesday, hopefully, I'm hoping to do today, which is Sunday, Tuesday, so on. So hopefully, when I do my last video, it will be on the 31st of October, the day of Halloween! I couldn't help that. Anyway, so guys, on the next episode, I will be talking about The Nightmare on Elm Street, played by Robert Englund, the first one, the best one, the only one. Please God, this is God. Anyway, guys, so, if you like this video, hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, follow me on Twitter at Shaneski180, that's ShaneSki180, follow me on Instagram at TheShaneski, that's _Shaneski, and as always, I will see you in my next video. Thank you, goodbye, and happy Halloween.